Hi, YouTubers. Welcome back to the Percy 64 albums countdown. And it feels like it's getting a bit serious to me because we're just about to count down from 45 to 41. After this one starts the top 40, as Alan Freeman would have said. Let's count down the top 40. But I had a rule before I started this, and one of a couple of rules. One is that it's got to be in my collection, as you probably heard when you saw that taster video. And the second one, I didn't say this, but I thought, well, I don't want to have 10 albums by one band, and it could have been quite easy to have a lot of albums by a band. I must admit, when I see countdowns of other people's albums, and it's all, for example, my brother would have, I'm sure, he'd have all the Fall albums in there. Maybe not, but it's dead easy to have all Beatles albums or something like this. So I limited in my own mind two or three. That's the most you're going to see, and there are a couple of bands that got 3 albums in here, and some with 2, but most with only 1. And I'm doing that for a reason. And it's the same with this band. That I could have had about 6 albums, certainly 3 or 4 or 5. Talking rubbish now, of this band, and I think any album. Well, and hang on, let's before I show it to you. The other thing I could have done, the other thing I could have done with this is bunged lots of classic, cool albums, so that people would have thought, "Wow, yeah, he's got great taste in this. He's got a really wide taste in music." It turns out I haven't got a really wide taste in music, and people say, "Oh, you listen to all sorts of stuff." My favourites are what you're hearing now, and it's particular styles. So I could have included. Let's think. I made a list of these before. So um, the Velvet Underground Banana Skin album, that would have been a cool thing to put in. London Calling by the Clash would have been good, or Sandinista, but I can't stand either of them, so they wouldn't get in. What else I write down? Catch a Fire or anything by Bob Marley at all would have been dead cool. Uh, Back in Black, AC/DC, a couple of good tracks, but not a great album. What's Going On, Marvin Gaye, that would have been ultra cool. And even Time Out by Dave Brubeck would have been a dead cool thing to add in. But none of those are in. But it did get me thinking. Maybe do a almost or a bubbling under, or count out the 65 through 80 as a quick countdown before we get to number 10. See what interest there is in that. But back to this album. So number 40, where are we? Number 45 is from 1971. I've got it down here, and it's this Untitled. I always refer to it as Zozo for the symbols that are on names. But Led Zeppelin 4 is probably the most useful title. There's not a bit of writing on the front, on the back, or even no in the middle. So no acknowledgement that it was Zeppelin. I think they wanted to let the music do the talking, because they'd released 1, 2, 3 before this, from about 68, 69 onwards. Really strong albums in their own right. But to me, Zeppelin 4 is the one where it sort of all came together, where they get it all professional and accessible, and lots of different styles. I mean, when you think about it, any album that starts Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Battle of Evermore, Stairway to Heaven, that's side one. It's got to go in there. It's got to be in your top 64 somewhere. So I don't know really what to say about this. I mean, there's a number of albums that when we get to the top 40, I'm going to say I'm not quite sure what I've had about this. Led Zeppelin 4, and my standout track is I think Rock and Roll. Just to drop the needle on that and listen to the drums kicking it all off, and such a great up tempo riffy, screamy song. If you like that sort of thing, if you don't, then it's not going to get you. But there you go. So number 45, Led Zeppelin 4, as I call it. Next band, absolutely rocked Woodstock in 1970. Lots of reincarnations of the band members after that, but always the same lead guy. And what I'm going to show you now is my favourite album by this band, and it's also their 9th album, also their first live album. And I guess there are a number of bands that are better, in my mind, live than in the studio, and this happens to be one of them. So it was the first album I got by this band. I've since sort of doubled back and got most of the earlier stuff as well, and the standout track is actually on the previous album. This 1976. It's called Amigos. This is the one that first turned me on to a band called Santana. Let's get it right. And it's called Moonflower. Oh, called Moonflower. It's such an underrated album. This double album, and you may know that I go sort of digging for vinyl quite regularly. You can get this anywhere for less than £5, less than $5 probably in the States. It's underrated. It's just nobody seems to want it, and it's my favourite Santana album by a mile. I remember Alan Partridge was once asked, "What's your favourite Beatles album?" Then, and he said Beatles' Greatest Hits as a bit of an in joke, and so it is with me. This is basically Santana's Greatest Hits, except about 12 of the 20 are done live and 8 are in the studio. So you get some of the reincarnations of some of the hit songs. But you also get a live version of things like "She's Not There" and "I'll Be Waiting," and yeah, lots of Santana classics. Brilliant band live. Never saw them, but there's sort of what Carlos Santana can do on a guitar is nobody's business. And lots of sort of Brazilian backbeats and congas and drums, and God knows how many drummers they got on stage half the time. Standout track is something called Europa. I think it's called Heaven's Tears, Earth's Cry, or something like that. Anyway, Europa. I've since managed to play the melody of this on a guitar. Very, very nice to listen to, even at my standard. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many tracks on it that are really, really good. So if you ever are in a second-hand vinyl shop or even a CD outlet, you'll pick up this album for less than £5. Do yourself a favour. It's a fabulous, fabulous album. Oh, and when was this? 1977. Yeah, so mid 70s. Third album. Hold your breath because we're moving forward a bit. My brother wrote to me midweek and said, "You're an old man, and 1970s, and it's all getting a bit." I'm not going to defend that, but I will slide one in from 2003 just to keep him happy, and my niece as well, who was shouting out for this album, or won by this band. I'll just show it right now. This is called Elephant by a band called the White Stripes. So Jack White and his former wife, Meg. Two-piece band, not many special effects. So a guy a bit like Gallagher with a guitar who can play it and make it do what he wants to do. If you're interested in this sort of thing, you probably heard it already, but grab a movie, DVD, or online somewhere called I think it's called "It Might Get Loud." It Might Get Loud. I find it really fascinating. It features 3 guitarists just basically yakking away and showing off to each other and just in conversation and trying things out on a guitar. The guitarists happen to be Jack White of the White Stripes, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, we've just been talking about, and The Edge from U2. So 3 generations, I think, I guess, of guitarists, what they're trying to shoot for. 3 different styles, but so much in common. They're even on the movie learning stuff from each other about what they can do and how they do it and how they deconstruct the stuff as well. This isn't one of the newest albums in my countdown, but actually recorded on kit that goes before any of the albums I think I'm going to do. So early 60s amps and valve amps and all that sort of thing. So Jack White always looking for the sort of true story behind the guitar. Standout track. I mean, there's obvious ones like Black Math and I can't remember, 7 Nation Army, one that's very, very famous that plays in sports arenas. Doom, 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 that sort of one. But being a blues and guitar aficionado, then my vote's got to go for Ball and Biscuit, which, if you've heard this album, you either love it or hate it. The Rolling Stone, there's just a fantastic quote from them. It gives Jack White 7 minutes to show off the orchestral possibilities of amp violence. So, once it gets past the early bit, then it's about last 5 minutes of him strangling a guitar for what it's worth. If you like that sort of thing, you go for that. So 2003, Elephant, their fourth album, I think, and yeah, to me, their best album as well. Oh. Now, there's one in the bin, which is a bit odd. 1972, going for, again, probably list under classic albums. This guy's a bit of a troubled soul in my view. I wasn't immediately drawn to this fella, but it was in Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Since left, was the most prolific of those four after the split up of that sort of band. And difficult to love, really, but difficult not to love this album, Harvest by Neil Young. So 1972, yeah, 1972. Yeah, it's got things like Old Man, it's got Heart of Gold, it's got Harvest, the title track, and my standout track, which is actually live on this album, The Needle and the Damage Done, which is a song about heroin addiction. One guy called Danny Whitten, who was in Crazy Horse, which is his backing band. And I was looking at online, just thinking, yeah, Danny Whitten, where did he come from? What band was he in? And he also wrote I Don't Want to Talk About It, which is covered by Rod Stewart and Everything But the Girl. It's all about not wanting to put yourself forward, which is I found fascinating. So Needle and the Damage Done is about Young's view that we lose really talented people really early, and he was talking about the 27 Club and all that sort of thing. People going down with drugs before they even get a chance to see what they can do and where they're at. So Young had to get him out of the band just before I think this released because he was so unreliable on heroin. So yeah, not much to add on that. Absolutely fantastic album. Him and the sort of Crazy Horse, but really down in the mix, and not a lot of thrashing around and discordant guitar, which Neil Young was famous for in the sort of 80s and late 80s, early 90s. So classic album, brilliant. Yeah, one to go. I'm going to give you a 1974 album. So still no 80s, still no 90s this week, but there's some to come, I'm sure. It's said about this band that they are comparable to the Beatles. Now let's think when I reveal who they are, and you go, no way. There are four of them, so that's comparable in one sense. But I would suggest that it's difficult to underestimate the impact they've had on modern music. So let's, the Beatles, obviously you're gonna agree with me on that. What you probably won't agree with, I'd love it if you did, is Kraftwerk. 1974 this album was released. This is their fourth album. They did Kraftwerk 1, Kraftwerk 2, and then a sort of duo of the leading two of Kraftwerk, Ralph and Florian. But this is the one that I guess was their breakthrough album, certainly in Europe. And it's just, well, ambient, electronic. I mean, their impact on pop, on ambient music, on electronic, on, well, probably lots of other areas of music I'm not even into, was immense. And everybody turns back and says, yeah, we first heard Kraftwerk doing that, and really get into the modulation, all that sort of thing. And we think about 80s bands, and you think, yeah, Kraftwerk is one of those. Yeah, they released things like The Model and stuff in the very early 80s. But when you think about their first album was 6 months after Woodstock, it starts to put them, to me, as a 70s band. Just the four of them started to push the boundaries of all things electronic and musical. My favourite track, there's not many tracks on this. There's about four on, just checking, 4 on side 2. Side 1, I'm going to choose that one, is called Autobahn, and it's 23 minutes long, and it sort of describes and sounds like a road trip, well, certainly a trip of 23 minutes long on a motorway. and I think that's what they were trying to go for. What are the sounds that you think about when you take your car, take your van, take your truck along a motorway? And you've even got the sort of change in tempo, the change in sound when it goes over the white lines and marker lines you can see on the album cover. They've even gone for that, and the changes in weather and the changes in acceleration, DX. Just it sounds ridiculous and dead boring, but turn down the room, lights, get a shot of whiskey and put this on. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, they were fourth album. What else have I got to say? Yeah, not a lot. Sounds like a road trip. Absolutely marvelous. And certainly albums to come after this by Kraftwerk, which were on a par, but this is still my favourite. So there you go. So that's 45 through 41. Hopefully, made that a bit shorter this week, and we're back in 5 days' time with the top 40. So any comments you've got, any likes, dislikes, fantastic. Stick them down below. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.